Grazed forage is the cattle producer's lowest cost feed source. And when weeds get in the way, you need quick and reliable solutions to deal with the problem. Here's a look at ways you can improve your pastures, grow more grass, and maximize your profit potential.
When we start to break down the economics of cattle production on pasture, pasture is the cheapest source of energy that we have for cattle production. Most estimates that you see from universities will say that grazing an animal costs about 45 cents per head per day, and that pales in comparison to the cost of stored feed for supporting that animal. So forages, they're the base of our operation. They're the key to our economic success. So any type of management that we implement that's going to improve that production, whether that's weed control or fertility, is going to help us save money at the end of the season. So when I'm talking with cattle producers, I always try to stress to them to have the mindset of a row crop producer. When you ask a row crop producer questions like how many bushels do you produce per acre, what are your break-even prices per acre on a particular crop, or even what is the management required to maximize that production per acre, they can usually tell you. In the cattle industry, it's kind of hit and miss. Some producers can tell you what their pounds of beef produced per acre would be for a particular year, or what is their break-even price, but not everyone thinks that way. A lot of producers, when they're looking at managing weeds in their pastures, they look at mowing as one of their first lines of action. A lot of the economic data would indicate that one mowing may cost as much or more than one application of herbicide. Now the big difference comes in is the length of control. When you apply good soil residual herbicide, you're holding out those weeds for several weeks, maybe even months. To be really effective in weed control with mowing, you would have to mow very timely 2 to 3 times per year over a period of years before you exhausted some of these perennial weeds that we have in our pasture. So the simple choice is to go out with a good herbicide, a good residual herbicide, get control of those weeds, and save yourself the time and the money to get those under control. When producers are looking at investing in their pastures this year for more productivity, and they're considering making herbicide applications, one thing that they can do is look at treating that fertilizer with products such as Graze On Next and Chaparral. And this allows us to do a couple of things. One, get that fertility out there and that weed control at the same time, which means that we're only paying for one pass across that pasture. Fertilizer applications are made a little earlier in the year, and so we're getting on those weeds a little quicker to get control. So combining our soil fertility improvements in the field or in the pasture with our herbicide applications has a huge benefit on the producer. So a piece of advice that I would give a lot of cattle producers, especially after having a lot of environmental stress on our pastures, is to get out early and to start to scout those pastures and look for what weeds are beginning to break. Cattle producers they're not oblivious to the weed pressure that are in their pastures from year to year. Usually the species don't change much, but getting out and making a decision early on getting control of those weeds is much cheaper than waiting to the last minute and making an application. As far as return on investment goes in those situations, the sooner that we can stop weeds from competing for precious pasture resources, the bigger the bang on production, or the bigger the effect that's going to have on production. So waiting later in the season when weeds are more mature and have already taken up a lot of resources, the return on investment tends to go down. Pastures can become stressed from things like drought or overgrazing, or in some case insect pressure. And going into the latter parts of the year, and these pastures have become thin and there's a lot of bare soil in those areas, we have to start looking at what kind of effect it's going to have on production the following year. So when we are in tune with what is going on in our pastures in terms of environmental stress, it helps us make better choices the year after. So when you're looking for weed control options for your pastures, go to rangeandpasture.com and find your local Corteva territory manager for more answers.